Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank the witnesses for being here today. And it's a busy day on Capitol Hill, so we're kind of been in and out. As we know, and I know has been the topic of the much discussion, is the rising price in gasoline. I represent West Virginia. It's a hardship on a lot of folks, particularly in rural America, where you have to drive sometimes 10, 20 miles to get to a grocery store, or to the store, or to your job, or to school. So I realize that this is something that everybody has a stake in, and that we need to make sure we're developing policies, and that the president is acting forcefully here. So, Ms. Sagama, it's nice to see you again. I saw you over at Environment and Public Works Committee last week, and you've thoroughly explained the administration's accusation that the oil and gas industry is sitting on 9,000 outstanding leases and permits. In your testimony, you specifically note the series of aggravating circumstances. You mentioned litigation as one of the issues. What role does the lack of pipeline infrastructure play in limiting the production of oil and gas, since an increase in production means that you will need to get more oil and gas to the market? If you could talk about the pipeline situation.
Certainly, there have been many pipelines blocked, either from litigation or via environmental activism. There's thought that blocking pipelines will stop oil and natural gas development, and all it does in this country, but it certainly shifts it overseas. So we cannot develop on many of our permits if we can't get a pipeline in place to capture that natural gas.
Right. Well, as you know, in West Virginia, we're fighting this. We have the Mountain Valley Pipeline that's 95% complete. It would get a lot of our natural gas to LNG terminals and also into the southern part of the country where it's very much needed. And additionally, and probably more importantly even to me, is the economic growth that comes with the expansion of the development of the Marcellus and Utica shales and in the plentiful area of West Virginia and the region of Pennsylvania as well. So there doesn't seem to be any change in terms of the regulatory policies, in terms of the ability to try to work these things out. And as you know, investors will leave. People will abandon projects, as we saw in the other pipeline, Atlantic Coast pipeline that we had. Eventually, it just goes away. So I guess I don't know if you see any roadway forward in terms of the regulatory environment for pipelines, what you might suggest there in order to get this, get these moving and these permits and these permitted pipelines on the schedules.
Well, I was very pleased that the Biden administration announced and the president encouraged more LNG exports.
Right.
But if we don't have the pipelines to get the gas to the LNG export terminals, then you can't export it.
Right.
So I think the next step is to recognize that permits need to be approved. And I think if the administration wants us to be able to provide on that LNG export capacity, that it should take steps to approve those pipelines.
Right. And let me go back to the leases, because this is something I've wondered about myself. The administration has called to impose fines on companies who have leases but have idle wells on those property. What kind of impacts does that have, and why does that happen, or if it is actually happening? Idle leases on properties,
well,
and if you imposed fines because you're not drilling?
Yeah, the non-producing fines are not going to incentivize more development, certainly, by making something more expensive. There's a variety of reasons that we're not operating on all leases. There are about 37,000 leases and about 12,000 that are non-operating now or non-producing now, and that could be various things. It could be that exploratory work has determined there's not sufficient quantities of oil and gas on some of those leases. We're in court defending about 5,900 leases, and it's very difficult to develop on those leases when it's held up in court.
Right.
So various issues like that can hold up leasing. Plus, the environmental analysis under NEPA often takes years and years, and so those leases will be considered non-producing while it goes through that environmental analysis.
So by saying some of the reasons, and then I'm sure there are others where this might be occurring, are you discounting the administration's projection to the American people that everybody's sitting on these leases and they won't produce, and it would be so easy if you just turned a switch on.
Well, the blame game is not particularly helpful, and trying to say that the reason is because of 9,000 leases it's a red herring.
Right, right.
Thank you.
Thank
Senator
you, Madam
Peters.
Chair. Thanks.
Thank you.